And we're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to use the flag on the screen, my flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, with liberty and justice for all. All right, great. So first up on our agenda is a consent agenda item, which is approval of our regular meeting minutes from March 10th and our special meeting minutes from March 17th. And Trent, do you mind unmuting everybody so we can take the vote? I think the only one we're missing there is George. There we go. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated?
I'll make that motion, Karen.
Thanks, Karen. Do we have a second?
I'll second it, Jan.
Thank you, Jan. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I wasn't there on the 10th, the Eileen Baker.
Okay, Eileen, so you're abstaining?
For the 10th, yeah.
Okay. Any other abstentions? All right. It looks like we've got 8 for Trent and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. So next up on the agenda is a discussion in regards to the 1920 academic calendar adjustment. And I'm going to hand it over to Jan to go over the proposed changes.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you for 1 minute. I cannot get into my superintendent's notebook. So if you just give me 1 second, I'll find it.
You got it. Technology, Jan. It's a wonderful thing.
You would think after living with it nonstop for the last, 14 days that I wouldn't be having this kind of problem. All right, I'm almost in.
That's okay.
Thanks for your patience. And again, let me take this moment to thank everybody for continuing on with us through these crazy times and being available for this meeting tonight and for Tuesday night's meeting. The academic calendar, as you might imagine, has been somewhat impacted by the crazy situation we find ourselves in. And while our original academic calendar indicated that, if we had snow days, we would use our 3 snowflake days, and then we would add days onto the end of the year. We find that in this situation, that probably is not the best advised way to proceed. As you know, we just started with our distance learning on March 16th. 23rd. And so we are loath to have a significant break just a few weeks away after finally, hopefully, getting the cadence down of distance learning. Our other reasons for proposing that we not extend beyond the original June 16th date as the last day and use some time during April break is that really we all know how hot it gets in our schools after June 16th, so hot that I actually listed it twice in my memo. And we also know that our seniors and any events associated with our seniors in the end of the year, and even our 8th graders with their activities, we really don't want to have to change them in the hope that we will get back to school and there will be some opportunity for end of year events. And finally, we feel that with all of the stress that has been associated with this current situation, we may very well want to have some summer opportunities, some summer education opportunities that could even begin as early as, the last regular day of school, should we need them. Because we don't know what the future is going to bring for us in the next month or so, we want to be prepared for that opportunity as well. So our recommendation to get as close to the 180 days, and I want to remind you that the governor waived the 180-day requirement, but the Commissioner of Education reminded us, superintendents on more than one occasion, that the spirit of that is to get as close as possible to the 180 days. So we're recommending an academic calendar that would give us 179 student days, and it would bring the teachers to the maximum contractual number of days. And what I did for you in the memo is created what the actual proposed dates were at the beginning of the academic year. the actual days we went to school during that month or will anticipate going to school. And then I broke out days that might be distance learning through the end of the year. And you can see the final tally in your notebook. It gives us 179 student days and 186 teacher days. The changes come in April vacation. Instead of taking Friday the 10th, which is Good Friday and a holiday, and the following week off, this would give everybody a 5-day break from all this distance learning. They would get Friday the 10th, the weekends, the 11th and 12th, and then the 13th and 14th. So Friday through Tuesday off. We would pick up 3 student days on the 15th, 16th, and 17th. And then we would pick up a 4th day on May 25th, which was a built-in snowflake day. Where we lost a day, we were supposed to make up a snowflake day on March 16th, but our schools closed on Friday the 13th of March. We feel like we've done a good job of trying very hard to reach all of our goals, not going beyond the 16th, which we thought was really, really important to give hope to all of us that there may be something normal in the end of our academic year, and to make that still possible, but still get as close to that 180 as we could. And I'll take questions if you have them.
Trent, do you mind opening up everybody's microphone? And I just want to remind everybody that if you have a question, if you could please state your name before your question. Thank you. So any questions, people?
This is Karina Julius, board member. I don't really have a question other than a comment, and that is just to say, Jan, I think you did a really nice job in presenting the data in the grid in our notebook. It really makes it very clear as to what the students were expected to do, as well as what we're proposing the school year look like. So thank you for putting that together so concisely.
You're very welcome.
Thanks, Karina. Any other questions from the board?
Alan Howler, board member. So in terms of student attendance, I think I caught the YouTube version of the meeting I missed on the 17th, but they'll be checking in every day. Is there a number of days? Is it the same in terms of a student missing or not signing in? Say, let's say a student was sick and didn't sign in, and or was sick for an extended period of time. Is there a number of days that a student couldn't miss, given the number of days left virtually?
Alan, we are waiting for guidance from the state on attendance. I was on a phone call with the commissioner earlier this week, and we were told that the state at this point, I don't know if it's policy or law, cannot examine distance learning days as attendance days. So for the state's purposes, we're not sure what that's going to look like. For our purposes, because we want to be sure that students are engaged and involved in education, we do expect them to be logging in every day. And once a week, we've asked our teachers to communicate either with parents or, if they're old enough, with students, and to get a direct response from them that yes, they are engaged and they have been involved, so that we are sort of doing a weekly definitive affirmative confirmation. Plus we know that students are involved and engaged when they're turning in work. During the first week, we had teachers reach out to any students who weren't engaging, and then now we've advised those teachers to turn over the names of any students who aren't engaging to administration, and they're following up with guidance counselors.
Thank you. That was a great explanation. I appreciate that, and look forward to hearing more about that.
Sure.
Any other questions from the board?
This is Karina Julius, board member again. Just a quick question. When should this be voted on and approved by the board? How will it be communicated to the parents? Will it be done via a visual, like a revised academic calendar, the pictorial representation, or have you given thought to that?
Well, I wanted to get it out quickly, being that we're so close to that date. So I was thinking that I would modify the memorandum that you received and send that out with my family letter tomorrow. I'm planning to do a Friday letter and talk about this and other things, including grading, graduation, all the things that people are starting to question. And I was going to send that out tomorrow. And then I can have a staff member work on revising the academic calendar and sending that out at a later date.
Okay, that makes sense. I think it's just important to be even if it's in the memo, to be specific about the date on which the students will attend and will not attend school. That's all.
Right. Thank you.
Great. Great question, Karina. Any other questions from the board? All right. Hearing none at this time, I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the changes to the academic calendar as presented. Do we have a motion on the floor from that?
So moved. I'll move.
Okay, so I got Eileen Baker made the motion, and who was the second?
Karina.
I'll second it, Jan.
Karina. Okay, both Karina and Jan. That's good. Thank you both. So all in favor of approving the academic calendar adjustment as presented, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so moved, and that was unanimous as well, Trent.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next topic on our agenda, and Jan, I'll hand it back to you. Our COVID-19 update in regards to distance learning.
Yeah, I just want to give a brief update, and we can make this a regular agenda item if you like from now until no longer necessary, about distance learning, how it's going, and answer any questions that you might have. I know we really started planning. We saw the writing on the wall just after about the 1st of March and started thinking about how we would make this happen. Things moved along very quickly. And I think not only Old Saybrook Public Schools, but most of the United States was quite surprised at how quickly things changed. So by the 13th, we announced the close down of our school district, and we started offering supplemental learning on March 16th and continued to do that through the 20th. The teachers did distance learning on professional development, setting up their Google Classrooms on that last Friday of the supplemental learning, and then we began our distance learning on March 3rd. So really, we're looking at being about 2 weeks into it, and so much has changed in those 2 weeks. When we began this process, we had no access to two-way video conferencing conversation. We had the advanced and I would say extreme requirements of this state's data privacy laws that we had to follow, which really disallowed a lot of different platforms and applications that teachers and students wanted to use to make learning possible. I have to commend the State Department of Education and everybody up in Hartford who really have worked very hard and listened really carefully to what we've been asking of them and have made it possible for us to provide some of these platforms now. So student data privacy has been revised during the period of the shutdowns. I think it will go back to the original law after that. We were able to get a FERPA waiver form. FERPA, remember, is privacy rights. It's like HIPAA, only it's the education version. We sent that out last week to parents and asked them, that was created by the board's attorney, and we asked them to opt out if they didn't want to allow their children to waive some of those privacy rights so that they could be involved in classrooms and have chats with other students and with their classroom teacher, and also to have video and live using Google Hangout. So much has changed just in those 2 weeks that we have changed a lot in how we've been able to offer our distance learning. We're still catching up while we're trying to communicate it regularly to families and teachers. We're still catching up and keeping everybody, informed about what is available to them. So I would describe this as still evolving. Certainly individuals are becoming more sophisticated. In my email that will go out to families tomorrow, it will include snippets of 2 songs that a band instructor gave to his students, and the students practiced their parts in isolation, and then all the parts were recorded and put together and played back out together. That's also been done with choral groups. We are really getting into some very creative and some very high-tech learning, and we're getting really good feedback and some concerns from parents. And I think the good feedback comes from the creativity that the teachers have engaged in, the type of independent problem solving that children are required to engage in with this kind of learning. And that has all been very positive. I was just speaking to a parent this afternoon who said that she sees her child really struggling and having to deal with difficult problems, and that she sees that as something very positive and good. We're still struggling with pacing. We're still struggling with the amount of work to assign. I'd almost liken it to every teacher is all of a sudden a first-year teacher again, and they're learning new tricks of the trade. We're going to come out the other side. We're going to come out in just a few weeks, very sophisticated in our use of technology and online education. And I'm really proud of the fact that teachers have developed those skills so rapidly and in such a crisis kind of situation. I think the only other thing that I would say is where we're finding people are struggling, part of it is situational. We planned for students being home. We didn't plan for students and their parents all being home together and all trying to get on technology together. As you know, we handed out quite a bit of technology. If you see the mess in the back of the room, that's still some pieces of technology that haven't been handed out yet. But we handed out a lot of technology, but nevertheless, you have parents and students all working alongside each other, trying to accomplish tasks that are very demanding. And I think situationally, I think that's tough. And I think of our teachers many of them are in the same situation. They're home teaching classes. They have children, many of them who are also in the same situation. So it's been an adjustment. And I think Mr. Gerber's here is a really good example of that adjustment. He sent me a picture of himself, his wife, and 3 children all working at desks in the same room. But I think that's really what we're dealing with. And what I have to say I'm so pleased about is not only the teachers and the support staff and the work they're doing, but also the families and their willingness to work with us and to work through this with us. So I would say all in all, going well, lots to learn. We're putting surveys out. We don't want to bombard people with too many stories, but we did a survey to our staff to ask them how things were going and what they needed. There's been a socio-emotional survey that's gone out at the middle school. I think if it hasn't gone out, it will go out at the high school. And something similar will happen at Goodwin, just saying, how is this going for you? What are the stressors in your life right now? Because it's not just academics. Questions still to be answered. And again, we're waiting for state input is how best to grade in this environment. As you know, many of the universities, including the Ivies, are going to pass-fail. The state university system here in Connecticut, we've been told by the State Department of Education, is understanding and accepting of pass-fail scores. But still, we have to decide as an education community what's best for our students. So those questions are starting to come up. Our early childhood program obviously was never designed to be a distance learning program. Early childhood programs are about learning basic skills, learning how to function inside a school building and socializing. And so we're making some changes and recommending some amendments to the tuition-based early childhood program, but continuing with a distance program in the coming weeks. I'm happy to take questions about anything specific that you'd like to know about. And if I can answer them, wonderful. If not, we'll be back together on Tuesday and I can bring anything back from curriculum and instruction that you might need.
I have a question about how we're addressing students that have the individual education plans, IEPs, as a challenge.
That was Eileen Baker. Eileen, we are individualizing, as an IEP suggests. It's individualized, and the PPS staff is individualizing learning plans. And this is part of the reason why we are thrilled to have the opportunity to use things, and this we just learned today we can do, like FaceTime.
Yeah, FaceTime you could do, yeah.
Right. Putting students together in small groups with a PPS staff member, a special ed teacher, a case manager, a counselor, a social worker, or individual conversations, so that individual needs can be met. When we were handing out technology, that was a consideration. And there are a lot of individual conversations going on with parents of students, all students, but particularly those students with an IEP plan right now, to make sure that we are meeting the needs to the standards that that we need to and want to meet them.
It's Cindy, board member, just checking in as someone who's doing it right now. Yes, it is a little bit more of a challenge and sometimes an unintended consequence of the children that receive special ed services. And we kind of discovered this as we're going along, is that, if they have they receive a lot of services, that is a separate classroom for each one of those providers. And that means we're kind of asking kids that struggle to begin with to try and navigate these different classrooms. So we kind of tried to have to go back and check that over again. And then the other thing was, anytime anybody didn't show up or they didn't write back or anything, then they got bombarded with a bunch of people emailing and calling the home at the same time. So then I'm dealing with that. It is a learning thing. I'm so impressed with what I see. I can't believe some of the things I'm doing. It is, you get creative and you figure out how to do it, but we're kind of all in it together. My estimation has been, in talking to the kids, really kind of split. About 50% of the kids are like, I can do this. I love doing this from home. And the other kids are like, no, this is just like, I can't do this. I wish I was back at the school. So it's really interesting to see, how it plays out with kids.
It absolutely.
This is Karina Julius, board. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's okay.
So Karina Julius, board member, just a comment and a question. I do want to applaud Jan and the teachers for pulling together so quickly and really doing an excellent job of starting where they were and have been very responsive and adjusting. And I think it is, like you said, Jan, it's like being a teacher for the first day of school again. And I think that I just as a parent and a board member, I appreciate the flexibility that the teachers have demonstrated and the innovation that they are approaching this with. It really is quite remarkable, because it's not an easy task. And there are growing pains, but everybody has really demonstrated that they are lifelong learners, that they're willing to try it and then assess how it's going, get feedback, and adjust. And I think that that's so important during this time, because it's just going to help the teachers do better and the students do better. So I think it's really important. I think you're doing a great job. And I think that you are a role model for the rest of Connecticut.
Well, on behalf of the teachers and the administrators, I thank you for that compliment. I know how hard they're working, I'm really proud.
Yeah, you should be, and you're leading them well. I have, that I usually ask the obvious question, and so I apologize for the obviousness of this question. But is it a foregone conclusion based on what we just approved that the children will not be returning to the school building? Will distance learning continue through the rest of the year?
That is not a silly question. It's a question we're asking ourselves every day. We, as an administrative team, are meeting and planning as if they will not come back before the end of the year, but we are still holding out hope that we're wrong. We can always roll back our plans. That will be easy enough to do, and it won't impact our calendar very much. We know that the governor has said schools will be closed through April 20th. The federal government has said we have to remain socially distanced through April 30th. So I think that the calendar that we put there would survive any changes to come. And so I don't necessarily think it's a foregone conclusion. I think we have to wait. We've been told that the peak of this pandemic is coming in the next few weeks. And then what happens after the peak is not necessarily, it's not like climbing a mountain and then all of a sudden you're on the other side of the mountain. We don't know if it will plateau, or I think all of the scientists and medical folks are trying to figure that out now. So the short answer is we are planning as if we're not coming back, but we know that we can roll that back without a problem.
Great, thank you.
Karen Broder, quick question or comment rather. I just want to say that the communication that has been going home to parents, I think, has been excellent from both you, Jan, and the staff going home to families. Very sensitive to all the struggles that families are feeling right now. Where they have older kids who are more independent learners, or those little nuggets from those early years when you're trying to hold down a full-time job working at home and you've got little ones bouncing off the wall. The flexibility and the sensitivity, I think, has been much appreciated. I'm glad you brought up the survey, because I was going to ask that question, knowing it's still early in the game. 2 weeks of distance learning, but I'm really curious to get the best information, best feedback from those in the trenches. So, love to get feedback early on, as you're doing, from parents, especially the younger ones. Parents K-12, but students older and families. So that's going to be very telling, I think, and I think you'll get some good information and suggestions of how to tweak this a bit if need be. But thanks for all your work.
Oh, you're welcome. As far as feedback goes, so far we've gotten it from the teachers, the support staff, guidance counselors, social workers, psychologists are communicating through a survey to students about their needs, just to see how they're doing. It's a check-in. How are you feeling is really what they're asking. And that will stay very private with that group. But I'm holding Sheila Riffle and I have a superintendent principals advisory meeting, obviously done on Google Hangout, my new friend, on Monday. And Mr. Anastasio and Ms. Riffle are planning to hold a senior class meeting. That's the group right now that we know we need to pay some attention to, because their senior year is so disrupted. And then I'm still planning, I tend to do those parent meetings a few times a year, and I'm still planning to do one of those coming up soon. It's on my to-do list to work that out with Trent Gerbers to figure out when that would fit into the schedule. And maybe it'll be a series of them. Maybe there'll be multiple ones depending upon what platform we use. And we're just going to try to keep communicating in that way all the time. The administrators are also doing communication at their level. So we're sort of alternating. They do one a week and I do one a week. We've been doing that since the end of last week.
Right.
And we think that that's also a great way to get people to talk to us about any concerns they're having or any positive experience they're having. People have been great about sharing funny pictures and students doing work, and it's been a lot of fun. They're keeping us connected. Otherwise, this gets really lonely. I never wanted to go into education to sit by myself in front of a computer.
Exactly. I think, Baker, I have a question regarding access to technology for families in our district. You're finding that some still need technology, like laptops?
We did our last give out on Monday this week, and had people pull up in their cars, and we had one person putting what they'd signed up for in their car. So people have had multiple opportunities to get technology over multiple weeks. At this point, we are not planning any more technology give outs, mostly because after listening to emergency management phone calls at night and listening to the report on how much this pandemic has spread throughout our state, we didn't feel comfortable putting any of our staff out there dealing with the public face to face. We are still doing some what we're calling one-offs, a special situation. Someone's keyboard breaks, something happens, and we're still handling those. But we don't have any more large technology give outs planned.
And do you know, one other question, Goodwin School, I know you've been commenting a lot on the middle school and the high school. So Goodwin School, our teachers having special sites for students to go to where they can accomplish some work, or the special gym and art and things like that?
Yes, everybody, all teachers have a Google Classroom. And yes,
Okay.
all the specials are also giving activities for students to do. And I know at Goodwin, in the area of art, there were some paper packets that went home as well. The art teacher actually dropped them off.
Videos too.
Okay, thanks so much. The challenge for sure.
It's a challenge, but it's amazing how creative people are.
It's true. I'm using FaceTime, and yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I think FaceTime will be helpful to our physical therapists, our speech therapists. I think those folks will be using it. ELL, perhaps.
This is George Chang. A quick question.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm still on mute.
No, you're on. We hear you, George.
Go ahead, George.
Thank you. And so, again, actually, I'll start off by, echoing Karina, that you and your DLT teachers are doing an amazing job. The question I have is, can you speak to a little bit about the meals that we're still serving? Are most people getting theirs? Are we having oversubscribed? Are we undersubscribed?
The number has grown every day, almost consistently every day. We saw our largest numbers over the last 2 days. And if I can get into my email, I can tell you exactly how many we did today. But that number is growing significantly, far beyond anything I anticipated.
Are we providing these all for free?
We are indeed. There will be reimbursement through the state, and it will be reimbursed at the free lunch rate. So the district will receive reimbursement. But right now we're providing it for free.
And so the implication is that the people who needs it are getting they're where to get it.
They're picking up their lunches at either the high school or Goodwin School between 9 and 10 every weekday. On Fridays, they pick up enough food for the weekends as well. This is for breakfast and lunch. And then in a few situations, we have staff delivering food.
Wow.
And
food for the weekend. That's incredible. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So yes, today's count was 670 meals. That's breakfast and lunch.
Wow. That's almost double.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. If you, when we send out the district leadership team meeting minutes, you will see we include the lunch count for all the days that lead up to that meeting, and you will notice a trend. They are without a doubt increasing.
Jan?
Yes.
This is Al Hyla, board member. I have a question. First of all, just a comment, and it's just repetitive, but kudos to everyone, yourself and your team, with all you're doing. It's very impressive. My question in terms of the budget, is there any budget implications? Is there going to be expenditures that fall outside of what has already been budgeted? And if so, will they be reimbursed?
So I will have a full report for you at next Tuesday's meeting of what we think it's going to look like. I've had multiple meetings with Mrs. Lastorti and Mrs. Pendleton about this. And I've been engaged in a number of webinars and conference calls to try to determine it. It's a bit of a moving target right now. But between the federal and state requirements that say that we have to keep all of our staff employed, and the implications about the transportation contract and that we have to pay our transportation contract, I anticipate that any significant savings that we thought might come from the close down will not happen. And in fact, there will be some additional cost. There could be some ancillary staff who could still file for unemployment, in which case that would impact the current budget plus the we will continue to have to kind of roll this out over the next few weeks, but this is certainly going to cost us some money. We will get reimbursement for some of this, and we will still get our ECS and excess cost grants this year. So we hope that this will end well. We had some money going into this that looked like it was going to be a surplus, and we think that that will be able to carry the day. But we are also about to send out a letter returning tuition for the early childhood program for the second half of March and the month of April, and that will have costs associated with it. But given that early childhood programming is about socialization and being in school, we thought that was the fair and appropriate thing to do.
Yeah, thank you, Jan, for a very thorough response. And again, kudos. This has been a surreal experience for everyone, I'm sure, but some real benefits come out of this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions for Jan before we move on?
This is Jan Furman. I have two. Can you hear me?
Yes.
One, am I correct that the state has waived any standardized testing, or do I have my states mixed up?
No, you don't have your states mixed up. That is the state of Connecticut. We will not have standardized testing this year, and there will be no growth scores. We'll also not have teacher or administrator evaluation this year.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, are we continuing to employ spring coaches and other co-curricular advisors?
So co-curricular advisors are continuing. I think you saw a high school newspaper was put out just this week, and that's both a class activity, and curricular advisors will be paid in accordance with the memorandum of understanding that we have with the Old Saybrook Education Association. Spring sports advisors, that is undecided at this time as to whether or not they'll be paid. I think will have to do with whether or not there's a spring sports season.
Just a thought on that, especially the sports, knowing that this is a stressful time for families for all the reasons that have been talked about at our meeting. Even if the coaches obviously can't coach, I think they have a lot of value to the students and their parents, just in terms of outreach, whether it's phone calls or Zoom conversations, in terms of supporting the students who are on their team. So just some food for thought. I would certainly support paying them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. Any further questions for Jan on this topic?
No, I would just want to concur that I think your memos have been very well written and very detailed and terrific for, I know, myself to follow. So thank you so much, Jan.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Not an easy task.
No, certainly not. All right, with that then, we'll move on to our last agenda item, which is a discussion about a policy amendment. And I'll have Jan step us through this. Just one question, though, that had come up, Jan, prior to the meeting, and I'm sure you'll probably cover this, was one of the board members had a question in regards to why we were being specific about this change just in regards to COVID-19 and why we wouldn't make this more of a general change. So, with that, I'll hand that over to you to go over this with everybody.
So tonight we are looking at a policy in the 9000 series, Board of Education bylaws, formulation, adoption, amendment, or deletion of policies. And we're looking at it through the lens of policies that need to be changed to fit our particular situation at this time. So in reviewing board policies, I realized that we have language that no longer applies to the education that we're providing. An example would be we have language about distance learning and how all distance learning will be at the expense of the family, and it needs to be with prior approval of the building administrator. Obviously, that policy needs some temporary revamping because none of those things are true. It's not at the expense of the family. We're providing it. It does not require prior approval of the administrator. So there are just a number of, I want to say 6 or 7. I have the list on my other desk in my office at my home. I have the list of policies that I'm going to present to the board. But the reason for presenting this board tonight and making it specific to our situation, it's almost like an emergency protocol for our policies. We want to change these policies, but we don't want to change them beyond this period of time. So we're going to present a series of policies to you, beginning with this one tonight. And then Trent Gerbers and I are going to keep track of the policies that we've reviewed here and amended. And we're going to ask the board to amend them again once things get back to normal. So they really are amended policies only to respond to our current situation, which is a health crisis, state of emergency, and a shutdown of schools. And the reason why we're starting with this policy tonight is this is the policy that says that all policies have to be read twice at 2 different board meetings, and that they become effective upon, especially those affecting students, upon the start of a new year. We need policies to become effective in this emergency situation quickly, which means I'm proposing in this policy that we change the language to policies only have to be read once at 1 board meeting. And that they become effective upon the vote of the Board of Education. And that really summarizes the changes that you see in blue in the policy that's in front of you. So walking you through it a little bit more, first of all, are there questions before I go on about the intent?
Yes, Trent, thanks, Trent. And I appreciate the explanation on the COVID-19 part, Jan. So
I'm actually on the OneNote, and I have a beach ball spinning around, so I can't access the policies, of course. So my question is, this is just for these particular policies to have 1 reading. This is not moving forward for all policies that the Board of Education is adopting, correct?
The intent of this is to be just now while we're in this emergency situation. And then the board can take action to undo this work at a later board meeting.
Yeah, because I think, because this is really some emergency considerations.
Right.
Where the procedure has always been, or I think I'm not sure it's something that's that flexible unless we are looking at it for emergency, but it usually is the first reading and then a second reading is adoption. Right. Give people time to think about it and come back.
Right. I think some districts are handling this, Eileen, by just saying to the superintendent, policies, enact them the way you need to. I'm not comfortable doing that. I want the board to know what I'm planning to do. I just don't have time to do it over 2 meetings. I want to be able to present them to you, put them in a notebook so you can read them ahead of time, present them to you, and have them voted on right then and there so I can move forward quickly.
Yeah.
So other questions for Jan on this? And this would be the first reading of this policy because we haven't made the change to the policy yet. The second reading would be at our Tuesday meeting, and we would be voting to, approve or not approve this policy change on the Tuesday meeting. And then as Jan said, along with this policy vote as a second reading at that meeting, we're going to have some other policies that we need to address, which will be like the first and final reading of those policies on Tuesday.
Jim Henderson here. Thanks for the explanation, Jan. And I think what my concern about that was, and maybe it's not a concern, it's more of a statement, was that we seem to be amending the policy just for this one specific circumstance and then changing it back as soon as we fear the danger has passed, which sort of goes against the rationale for having a quote-unquote policy. And that's fine with me either way, because we can always go back and take this away as soon as the emergency has passed. It was just my thought process that maybe we should amend the policy in general to make it applicable to, in cases of national emergency, the board shall decide to use 1 reading versus 2 readings. So that was my only input on that particular passage that you had in the red line policy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, certainly the board could do that. You could make it more general, more broad than this. I was trying to limit this emergency power to this specific. I think I was probably mirroring and mimicking the way the federal, like the way the executive orders are coming out of the governor's office. Very focused on this particular situation and enforcing, creating new rules and laws specific to this situation. But if the board wants it to be more broad than that and to be for all emergencies, then we can rework the language.
This is George Chang. I understand the need to, or the desire to try and keep this to just the current situation, and the reason is, Jan needs to move on this pretty quickly, and if we try to make the policy more general to cover a wider range of possibilities, the wording for that may need to be more carefully studied, and there may not be time for that at this point. And so I think certainly, Jim, to your point, this is certainly a topic that should be visited in the future, but currently, to cover this current situation of COVID-19, I think it's quite prudent to just do it for the current case. And to add to that, I'm just really wondering whether we actually even need to wait till the following Tuesday to finish the second reading and just go ahead and approve, give Jan the authority to make that decision now.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that question myself, George, and thank you for bringing it up, because I think our current policy does provide for the exception of emergency situations, which this definitely would apply to. But, I'm certainly open to discussion about that as well.
It looks like, I think, Baker, looks like number 7 in this document really addresses what Jan was saying, that during the period in which the El Sabric Public Schools are responding to emergency by the virus, that they can be amended after one reading. I would be in support of that. I wouldn't necessarily broaden it out.
Any other questions or comments, concerns about the language? Okay, so hearing none on that, this will be considered, even though I agree with you, George, we probably could have not had a second reading. I think just to make sure that we're following kind of the letter of our own policy. And since we do have a meeting on Tuesday to cover the other changes that we want to talk about doing from a policy perspective, that I won't, obviously call for a motion to approve this now, that we'll treat this as the first reading, and we'll vote on this on Tuesday during our meeting at that time. Does that work for you, Jan?
That's fine.
Okay. And any comments, questions?
Just a quick question on that. If we do not get a quorum on Tuesday, will that affect this decision?
If we don't get what?
A quorum.
A quorum.
Oh, a quorum.
Yeah, I think it would, George. I think it would affect our ability to vote on it at least. Yeah, so good point. Do we just quick poll of everybody? Is there anybody that knows that they won't be able to attend on Tuesday?
I've got nothing but time.
Don't we all, Jim? I know. I need to get back to the Tiger King. So we all need to find out who did it. All right. So then with that, then I will suggest that we vote on this on Tuesday along with the rest of our other policies that we're going to be discussing. Unless there's any further question or discussion you guys want to hold at this point.
No, my question, I mean, Baker, we'll get a chance to review those policies that are specific to this topic, that will be being able to make a motion to adopt them, considering the missing nature, correct?
Yes. So on our notebook for the meeting on Tuesday, correct, Jan, you will be posting the policies that we're going to be discussing on Tuesday ahead of time so that the board can review that?
That's right.
Okay.
And they're all specific to this emergency nature, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question, Eileen. All right. Any other conversation or any other comments, Jan, from you in regards to this topic?
No, none at all. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I will remind us all of our meeting on Tuesday, on April 7th at 7 o'clock. And we're going to conduct it in the same fashion that we did this evening. And we'll see if we can get a reminder about the notebook and the policies out to everybody ahead of the meeting, just so that we're all prepared with any questions or comments on this. And if there's no other topics or questions that we want to discuss at this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Al Hyla.
Thank you, Alan. And do we have a second?
I'll second Cindy.
All right, seconded by Cindy Saltini. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so moved, and that sounded unanimous as well, Trent.
Thank
Great.
you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everybody.
Stay healthy, stay well.